My name is Carrie Gallo. I'm a partner at BDO Canada and the firm's national public sector leader. Thank you for joining us. I've spent the majority of my career working with public sector organizations and the unique challenges faced by the public service. And today we'll be discussing some of those challenges for public sector leaders as provinces and cities and governments begin to reopen. To date, organizations have had to respond and mobilize quickly as a result of that singular event that has been COVID-19. And truth be told, public sector organizations at all levels are still getting used to the new way of working and all the challenges that come with delivering services in a remote way. So it's safe to say that working today is still business, but definitely not as usual. The pandemic has accelerated the pace of change for things that have been on the radar for governments for over 20 years. So things like teleworking and work sharing, seamless remote access, for example. And this genie is out of the box, and we're never going to go back. At BDO, we've spoken to our clients in the public sector, and we understand that technology and security are top of mind, as is the evolving culture and leadership of people. So today I've brought together a group of experts to provide guidance on a few of those challenges that we're all facing with remote working environments, and specifically how public sector leaders can respond. So welcome Evgeny, Vivek, Pauline, and Carmelina. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline, let's start with you. You've been working with governments primarily in Western Canada. Do you see longer-term changes in the culture of the public sector as a result of COVID? And what do you think those culture shifts will be?
Thanks, Carrie. That's a great question. It's so timely and relevant right now. You know, I spend my days talking to stakeholders within the federal government, provincial jurisdictions, municipalities, and Indigenous communities. And one thing's for sure, culture is definitely going to be reshaped because of COVID-19. I mean, how can it not? So in order to determine kind of where we're going from a cultural perspective inside the public sector, I think it's important to know where we are or where we've been. So there's two things that we know tried and true with the public sector culture, and that's the culture, regardless of who I talk to, the culture is one of service. I mean, you sign up for it. You're a part of the public service. You're a civil servant. So service is not going away, that need to serve communities and neighbors and constituents. The second part is that culturally, governments tend to be a little more risk averse. And so what that means is things have been slower moving. So with crisis comes change, and the outcome of COVID-19 and all of us reacting to the pandemic crisis is that it will likely be an enabler that reformers of the culture have not been able to address in decades. So what can we expect to see in the culture moving forward? Well, again, there's two main themes that I'm hearing. The first is, as governments disperse their workforce, partly because people are used to working from home now, and governments realize that there's a lot of money that's tied up in having large infrastructures, that dispersed workforce is going to lead to an increased value and cultural norm of diversity. So it won't matter if you're in Edmonton like I am. I might be able to be a policymaker working out of Ottawa, but from my home office in Alberta. That dispersedness and diversity is going to lead to an outcome of increased innovation for the government. So where it was known as risk averse before, it's going to move to a culture of innovation. And the second is definitely one of embracing technology and moving technology from the back office to the backbone of the way government serves its constituents better. And moving that technology from the back office to the backbone will, again, save money. It will help government organizations be more efficient. And in this time of a health awakening, really, it helps keep us safer by enabling technology. That's what I'm seeing in summary, Carrie, that the culture that is of service isn't going away, and the embracing of technology is going to allow the culture to become more innovative.
That's a really good point, Pauline, and I want to pick up on some of the things that you mentioned. Let's talk a little bit more about those technology enablers that will underline some of those culture shifts. Evgeny, given your experience, what tools and technologies have been used or even considered by public sector organizations to make sure remote work is possible and seamless?
Thank you, Carrie. I want to share some feedback from our existing project in the public sector. We've been working for a department in the Government of Canada, assisting with technology selection, market scan around collaboration and smart workspace. At the beginning of the pandemic, client had struggled with remote access, with no proper infrastructure and training to support a massive shift from the regular environment into the work from home environment. So one of their desires was to ensure that the remote workers can work from home seamlessly and as soon as possible. We went through a journey to identify and deploy emerging technologies that make remote collaboration possible. This journey is definitely unique due to the current pandemic situation and requires the project to be extremely agile. We changed the scope of the project multiple times, reviewed and adjusted the project on a weekly and sometimes on a daily basis. As part of the project, we brought Microsoft Teams unified collaboration platform, allowing users to collaborate inside digital space and groups, teams, communicating, sharing files, designing ideas through their whiteboard. Microsoft Teams offers auto-transcribing services for calls, auto-translation of live events, and a vast number of features that everyone would like to use if they have access to. But we went a little bit further and currently advising on deploying an intelligent chatbot service to assist users through the process of learning Microsoft Teams platform and its functionalities. Cortana and other virtual assistance platforms will support users throughout the journey. And we all know how frustrating it is to wait for hours on a call to get technical or customer support help. But imagine that virtual assistant can be available when you need it the most with no waiting time.
Cool. Yeah, and Evgeny, I know we've all certainly lived through this transformation and have adopted a lot of technologies in the last few months. So I guess the question is, what is the art of the possible where technology is concerned?
Yeah, as you know, Carrie, we also are working on this project and showcasing the use of augmented and virtual reality technologies, HoloLens, hologram projectors to bring people closer through the virtual and augmented reality space in time where we cannot interact in the physical space to some extent. I see that collaboration in the digital and virtual worlds will be a new norm for sure. And our goal is to help people to understand the technology and to embrace it. The immediate need to build a remote collaboration space that is easy to use and easy to deploy open a lot of opportunities to bring emerging technologies forward. I truly believe that we have an opportunity to embrace technology to its fullest. Virtual and augmented reality, AI virtual assistants, face and voice recognition, auto-transcribing, auto-translation services, AI-based noise cancellation, AI-based calendar booking. This is just a few tools that I can name that can become the part of today's world and not the future anymore.
Certainly no doubt that organizations have had to pivot quickly to enable remote working. And some public sector areas work with very sensitive information that can only be accessed on secure internal networks and were never intended to allow remote access. In response to this crisis, infrastructure was set up to allow remote access, but speed, I worry sometimes, could have been prioritized over security. So Vivek, where might governments be exposed if this has been the case?
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, that's a very important question and top of mind for a lot of organizations. We all know that IT departments had to rapidly respond and implement solutions that enabled remote working capabilities, and perhaps shortcuts were taken to prioritize connectivity over security. And in a short period of time, organizations' IT environment is fundamentally different. So organizations do need to evaluate, certain processes to correct potential risk exposures. And we recommend to take some of the following steps. So top of mind would be, patch your systems. Periodically check that systems for missing patches and, virus definition files for your antivirus, and make sure that they are being kept up to date. Ensure that your systems, including your VPN and your firewalls, are up to date with the most recent security patches. Another one which organizations wouldn't necessarily have looked at is to make sure that employees are being encouraged to securing their home Wi-Fi. Given that we are all now working from home, you can control your corporate network, but you have to encourage your employees to secure your home Wi-Fi. Employees should be using strong authentication techniques to authenticate and connect from a home Wi-Fi. And most importantly, once they do update their home Wi-Fi settings, they should consider changing the network passwords as well.
Good points, all good points, Vivek, and certainly my own experience, I've been reminded on numerous occasions to, particularly on the network passwords and changing those, I've been reminded on numerous occasions that I should be changing regularly, and I have. And we could argue, though, that the majority of employees and staff may not understand some of these issues. And sometimes I put myself in that box as well. So what would you suggest government organizations do to provide increased awareness and understanding of security concerns?
Oh, Carrie, that's a very good point that you brought up here. We have seen quite a bit of a surge in phishing scams and email spoofing. So organizations have to relook at the frequency of how they conduct, cybersecurity awareness trainings for their staff. This is now more important than ever. You have to conduct a cybersecurity awareness campaign to increase the knowledge about phishing attacks, especially as it relates to COVID-19. We're all very click happy to read anything or any information that is related to COVID-19, and attackers are utilizing COVID-19 as a bait to inject malware. So awareness is definitely something that organizations need to work towards. But we can also do some very simple things. It's easy enough to update your password policy. So organizations should be pushing stronger password policies, create strong passwords, and if possible, even use multi-factor authentication. Another easy one is, confirm all requests for payments or money by phone. You might get an email saying, we're changing our account number here, so send the payment here versus where you were previously sending. So it's easy enough to pick up the phone. Just confirm when in doubt. And most importantly, conduct continuous monitoring and detection. Ensure that you enable your continuous monitoring solutions, especially when folks are working from home, and so that you're able to respond to any cyber incidents that might impact your email systems, networks, and any key applications. Given our current situation is the new norm, security has to be kept top of mind, and it has to be made everyone's responsibility within the organization so that collectively the organization can prevent cyber breaches.
Thank you. We've talked about some of the security challenges and technology enablers with Vivek and Evgeny, but ultimately it does come back to people. As a people leader, Carmelina, what are some of the tactics you would advise to ensure your staff remains productive as remote contributors?
That's a very good question, Carrie. Managing a remote team requires different approaches than managing resources in a conventional way. It's not necessarily an intuitive way to manage resources, and the conventional approach of face-to-face interaction just isn't possible in a remote setting. So firstly, most importantly, what I would recommend is to hold an all-hands-on-deck check-in with your team. These are also known as huddles. These are quick 15 to 30-minute check-ins, and they can be commensurate with your management style, so daily or weekly or even every other day. Experiment with what works for your team. The key is to hold the time slot and make attendance mandatory. It could be roundtable style, and each team member goes around the table and answers 3 questions. What are my accomplishments from the last check-in? What do I have on tap ahead of me for the day or for the week? And if I need support from my leader or other team members for the work ahead. Now, this really keeps the team functioning together as a team, where one team member can offer support to another if they have the cycles to do so. It keeps the leader aware of what tasks there are on hand, and of course, provides opportunity for that leader to redirect team members to higher priorities if they exist, and it keeps each team member accountable for their work. Secondly, I would advise to choose video over conference calls. Do not underestimate the value of face-to-face communication. Working from home doesn't mean social isolation. Video conferencing over audio calls really helps to read people's reactions and their verbal cues and keeps physical contacts between team members. This is going to take some getting used to by team members, but as it becomes the norm and the expectation, everyone is going to surely begin to start turning that video on. And finally, I would suggest increasing recognition. During times of disruption, just like we're experiencing today, employees' desire for being recognized increases. Recognition serves as a motivator and really has been proven to increase employees' productivity. Now, of course, we're speaking in the public service context, so recognition doesn't necessarily need to be monetary. It can take the form of public acknowledgement or development opportunities. And leaders can also encourage peer-to-peer recognition as well. Doing so really helps create a strong corporate culture.
Thank you for that insight, Carmelina. I'd like to thank all my guests for joining me today and providing their thoughts on resuming the public sector in the new normal. And also a big thank you to everyone watching. We hope you found the discussion valuable. If you have any questions and want to get a hold of us, our contact details are included in the title screen. Otherwise, you can connect with us on LinkedIn or head on over to bdo.ca to view all of our COVID-19 related content. Take care, everyone, and stay safe.